Hello, YouTube family, and welcome back. I am Mariam and today's case is one of the top mysteries and most notorious case of South Korean history. Frog Boys are five boys: Cheol-won, Ho-Yeon, Kim Jong-Gyu, Park Chun-in, Kim Jong-Sik, aging between 9 to 13 years old. They were living in a small area in the outskirts of Daegu district in South Korea. On March 26, 1991, South Korea was seeing a public holiday and first local elections in 30 years. So schools were closed as well. These boys were studying in the same elementary school. They were a gang of six kids actually. The sixth child, Kim Tae-ryong, was 10-year-old at that time. All six boys planned to go to Mount Waryong to collect salamander eggs because there were some streams over the mountain. One of them, Kim Tae-ryong, decided to break from the pack as he yet had to have his breakfast, and apparently his mother also did not want him to go far away from the house. The remaining five boys decided to go ahead with the plan, so they decided to hike towards Mount Waryong with the help of sticks and cans in their hand. Around 9 a.m. Around 1 p.m., Cheol-won, Woo Jong-Yu's father, received a call from Taekwondo Academy. So the father went out of the house looking for his son, looking around all the houses in the village when he found out that all five boys missing. That's when the search for Frog Boys began. Now let's come to the fact why these boys are called Frog Boys. Like I said earlier, boys went to Mount Waryong in search of salamander eggs. At first, they were misunderstood to collect frog eggs, hence called Frog Boys. Getting back to the case, looking for boys, one of Woo's friend told them that he had seen five boys and he asked them where they were going, to which boys replied that they were going to find salamander eggs. Because of this statement, Woo said all fathers thought that boys must have gone up to the mountain because there was a pond up the mountain, so apparently that's where salamander eggs were to be found. So they decided to go up and look for boys up the mountain, but they could not find any sign of them. By the afternoon same day, boys were reported missing to police. But a ridiculous thing happened. Police decided not to pay much heed to the matter since boys might be playing somewhere till late. How ridiculous is that? I mean, first 48 hours are considered crucial in these kind of cases. Now, I am not too sure here because researching the case, I found two kind of conflicting pieces of information. According to a report, this matter was reported to local reporters the same day boys went missing. And according to another piece of information, reporters and journalists were informed on the 7th day they went missing. What I understood from this is that missing a report was given to local reporters, but this news took 7 days to gain momentum to be a national level news, as of course, first local elections in 30 years were taking place. What could be more important than that? Now, police did conducted a thorough search on the mountain later that night till next morning, but no trace of boys was found. So, police concluded this case as a runaway. Runaway like how? 9 to 13 years old kids without any luggage or money just decided to run away. I mean, my mom tells me a story that when she was like 8 to 9 years old, she was with her girl gang, once planned to walk by the river to see where it will end, but decided to drop the plan once they walked for few hours, realizing that they were gonna miss the way back home otherwise. Because obviously no kid has got such guts to do such obnoxious thing. So parents and villagers strongly opposed this theory. Then another theory came up. Apparently, according to the police, that boys might have lost their way home simply. Again, this theory was trashed by the locals because mountain was only a few miles away from their home and boys knew the area very well, and if they somehow still got lost, town illuminates at night and was clearly being seen at night by any lost person. Well, I couldn't pinpoint the exact location of their houses, but this map shows the distance between their school and the point where they supposedly went missing. You guys can clearly see that it was a distance of only a few miles between the point they went missing to their school. Now, parents were really panicking at that moment, and still they got shouted at being called irresponsible parents, not being able to take care of their kids. Wow, very good thing to say to the parents who are already traumatized. Anyways, 3 days after the boys went missing, Jong-Sik's father received a call in his home saying, "I have the children. They are all suffering. Two are very ill." The caller asked for a huge sum of money to a street near Daegu station. All the parents with police went to the mentioned spot to find nothing. So police considered it a prank call. 5 to 6 days later, this case finally gained media attention, and within 2 days, it became a city-wide news. And a week later, everyone in the country was talking about if boys were still alive or not. And one day, Seongsu Elementary School, where boys were actually studying, received a phone call. Apparently, that call was from Jong-Sik, one of the missing kids, who was sobbing and asking for his mother on call. Jong-Sik's mother, who though saw, ran towards phone, but that call turned out to be a prank. What kind of sick mentality is that? You can't just play pranks with the people who are already in pain and are already heartbroken. You just gave them a hope and then just snatched it. Very disappointing. Imagine the pain of those parents. Now an update to this case were being broadcasted live. This case became a national matter. And president of that time, Roh Tae-woo, not only made an official statement on the matter, but also enlisted around 300,000 police and military inmates to search Mount Waryong. Many companies, schools, and civic groups made a donation of around 42 million won, that is around $35,000, as a reward for the person who found those boys. Now, all these efforts being conducted by the government and public clearly demonstrate the gravity of this matter at that time. Intense searches were conducted not only at the mountain but also in the nearby area, including irrigation waterways, express bus terminals, stations, like everywhere. But all the leads that police got after all these efforts were either false or worthless. 7 months have passed. Massive searches were being conducted, but not a single clue was found about what happened to all these 5 boys. Now, of course, so much time has passed. How long media could cover this matter and how long people could be interested in the same news being broadcasted every day. So this case started to get cold. Well, it can get cold for other people, but not for the parents of these children. All parents left their jobs and decided to get on a mission of finding their kids themselves. They rented a truck dedicated completely to spread word about their children. They were distributing flyers going around the whole country. They used to request people to inform them anything they might know over a megaphone. Pictures of frog boys were even published on phone cards, milk cartons to spread message everywhere, but nothing could be found. For 3 years, those parents traveled around South Korea and they ultimately had to come back home because, of course, they had a family to feed, to take care of. Some of the parents even ended up getting in debt and even lost their jobs. Longing for their boys, these parents started to try to adjust in their lives, when something disturbing and very frustrating happened. On January 12th, 1996, that's around 5 years after Frog Boy's disappearance, a well-dressed man came to meet Woo Jong-woo and he introduced himself as a psychology professor Kim Jong-un. Apparently, he was some criminal psychologist and he said he was studying this case for a year. Well, thing here to note is that criminal psychology was not a big thing back then as it is now in South Korea, and because he mentioned that he came from US, everybody immediately trusted him because America is a big thing in Korea. He said he knew exactly where kids are. He said Jong-Sik's father, Kim Cheol-gyu, actually buried all 5 kids and they are buried somewhere in Cheol-gyu's house. He kept on insisting and pointing fingers on Kim Cheol-gyu and ultimately convinced police, media, parents and public to dig out his house. Now, some parents got suspicious towards Cheol-gyu. Some asked him to go with the detectives, and some did thought that these allegations were absurd. Kim Hyun-do, who is Kim Jong-gyu's father, said no matter what, it is impossible that someone would murder their own child and bury them under his own house. The psychologist was so confident that a live media broadcast was arranged to cover the digging. He was acting as a leader, guiding diggers where exactly to dig. Jong-Sik's father was really frustrated and devastated. He named the situation as killing him twice. After all the digging and damaging to Jong-Sik's house, nothing was found. Psychologist then turned to run away but eventually got caught by the police for his own safety. Because of course people got angry due to his allegations and they just wanted to grab him and teach him a lesson. But police eventually got him and took him to police station for his own safety. Jong-Sik's father was so devastated that his exact words to psychologist were,
자식 잃고 그렇게 하면 마음 아파가고 이제 마음 좀 겨우 잡고 이러는데 또 와가지고 안매장이 뭐 뜨는 해가지고 이런 초중 이런 쇼가 또 어디 있으면 그래.
I mean, guys, let's think about the frustration he must have felt. He was already hurt for not finding his son and was now being accused of killing him himself. Here I was thinking, what led that psychologist to come to such a long way to accuse Jong-Sik's father? Well, Jong-Sik's father's alibi was not strong for the first 3 hours those boys went missing. Jong-Sik's father was the one who got the ransom call. The fake sobbing boy who called at the school was claiming to be Jong-Sik, and I think that psychologist must have connected all those incidents to declare Jong-Sik's father a murderer. Well, this was too absurd and stupid. Just because you have a couple of theories in your hand does not mean you can prove someone a murderer, right? Kim Cheol-gyu died at the age of just 40 years due to the resentment, stress and pain of his missing child. Now let's jump to September 26th, 2002, 11 years after Frog Boy's disappearance. A local was hiking Mount Waryong in search of acorns when his bag suddenly dropped and he stumbled upon a small pit, and what he saw was something really horrific. He saw a couple of children's clothes laying on the ground and some small bones laying there. He immediately called the police and that mountain was then swarming with investigators, reporters and locals. Parents too immediately arrived at the informed site. Let's take a moment here to try to understand the pain of those parents. 11 years. 11 years they anticipated to see their kids alive, and all those hopes just vanished in a moment, and all they got after so many years was just the decaying bones of their children. We cannot imagine what they were going through. These were the bones and clothes of 5 children of the same age Frog Boys were, and these kids were recognized by their clothes they wore the day they went missing. Now the strange thing with the found remains was the assortment these bones were found. The body was found with the trousers and shoes flipped over shoulder and clothes were knotted together. And craziness just doesn't end here. Empty cartridges and 3 unused bullets were found in Young-Gyu's clothes. So parents were convinced that their kids were actually murdered. Now, unfortunately, police did not do a good job in evidence collection from the scene. People from police department who excavated bodies were not even body recovery experts. So an 11 years old crime scene which already got compromised due to the natural growth in the area further got contaminated and no good evidence could be collected from the crime scene. How crazy is this? 7 months, 300,000 people and hundred of times search of mountain and those bodies could not be discovered before. How is that even possible? Were the boys not killed on the same day they got missing? We will come to that question later. Forensic reports of body remains determined that boys were killed around the time they went missing, though exact date and time of their death could not be determined. Bones were actually so deteriorated that exact cause of death could not be determined. Initial report of police determined hypothermia to be the cause of death because they said the way bodies were curled up was because boys lost their way home and tried to keep themselves warm like that. This theory was immediately rejected by the parents because boys knew Mount Waryong good enough not to lose their way home. And hypothermia, well, it was not cold enough to kill 5 boys when they were just 5 minutes away from their home. They could just have simply came back if they were feeling cold. And even for a second, if we imagine the boys were died by hypothermia, their bones would have been found on the surface, scattered due to wild animals, not in the proper arrangement. They were found according to the experts. The thing I forgot to mention earlier was that their bodies were actually found very near to the area boys went to scavenge salamander eggs. Again, with hundreds of searches around that area and 300,000 people, I cannot understand why these bodies were not discovered earlier. Another ridiculous thing police did during the excavation was they just piled up all the bones together in a pile, which not only hurt parents but compromised evidences as well. The bones excavated by the forensic experts were only taken as evidence because the bones excavated by police were compromised and unfit to present as an evidence. Now, what actually killed those boys? Forensic reports showed sharp cuts on the boy's skull. Anthropologist experts declared that those wounds were actually man-made and made before the death of the boys. This was a turning point on the case to clearly declare that boys were actually murdered. The problem is that murder weapon can only be speculated and it could only be deduced that blunt force was used to hit children in their head. This is the closest possible representation of Frog Boy's murder weapon. Now, some people came up with the theory that this must be doing of some psychopath because, of course, normal human being cannot be able to do such vicious thing. But if it was some psychopath, why didn't any other similar killings came forward? A very important thing to note here is that the point where boys' bodies were found was only 100 meters away from military shooting range and a lot of cartridges and bullets were to be found in that area. Children around the area used to go up there to collect empty cartridges. But obviously, this was a shooting area and any bullet could have shot anyone lingering around the area if not being careful. So most of the people believe that some bullet might have hit any of the boys and rest of the boys were killed to cover that better up. Military, upon questioning, responded that because the day boys went missing, there was no shooting practice because of the public holiday. A commissioned officer could shoot if wanted. Allegedly, someone on that day did shoot it to get rid of some extra bullets in the gun, and some kid did came forward claiming to hear a gunshot following a scream. But due to political conspiracy, military could not be investigated properly for the murder of those boys. Another theory based on the evidences is that killer might be some industrial worker near the area by the speculation of the expected murder weapon, which apparently was used by the workers from nearby area and by the knots that were made on clothes only industrial workers were capable of making those kind of knots? We have no definite answer. These parents desperately want to know the reason their kids met that fate before they die. There are many unanswered questions in this case. Soil analysis of the area where bodies were found showed that bodies did decay at the area they were buried, since decomposing bodies release phosphorus and other elements in the soil, which were actually found in the soil samples taken from that area. Their teeth analysis showed that they did not physically develop much from the time they went missing. Experts concluded that boys were killed at the same area they were buried because the way bodies were found, bodies could not be arranged like that if they were killed before. Let's say all these things are true. What about the massive searches conducted in the same area? For a moment, let's say all 300,000 people did not perform well in search mission. How could desperate parents miss that spot? Now, this is my personal point of view that if the call Jong-Sik's father received after 3 days boys went missing was real, what if they were really kidnapped, and when the kidnapper saw police coming up with the parents, he decided just to keep quiet? What if boys were actually not killed the same day they went missing and were killed once massive search of Mount Waryong stopped? One crazy thing that made no sense to me and which made me think that there might be more than one person involved in the killing is that those were 5 kids, way more for one person to handle when others were getting hurt. Boys might have tried to scream and run away if it really was one person. Was it because the boys might have seen something they were not supposed to see and were killed to hush them up? I don't know how these questions will be answered. I can't even imagine the trauma these boys might have went through before the time they got killed. Do tell me in the comment below that what do you guys think might be the answer to the death of these boys. Anyway, in 2015, statute of limitation on first degree murder was removed in South Korea, so any new evidence, if there, can reopen this case to resolve it once again. I have linked all the sources of information I used to study this case. CNA Insider has done a great job in covering this case, so do check out their videos as well to find out how frustrated all these fathers are for not being able to find answers till date. Thank you guys so much for making this far into the video. Don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button, and I will see you in my next video.